All right, everybody, welcome back to the number one TV show in the universe. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon and The Blackest Heart, both books published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Today, I'm going to be reviewing Night Sins by Tami Hoag. This book came out in 1995. Here's the thing. Back in the mid-90s, I recall reading a Tami Hoag novel and enjoying it, and then just almost completely forgetting about that author entirely up until now, it's October, almost Halloween 2022. So, I was in the bookstore the other day, and I'm like, I remember that book I read, a Tami Hoag book, and I was browsing through the mystery. I saw a whole bunch of them. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to see. I don't remember which one it was, but I just randomly picked this one up. This one happens to be the one I read back there. And she's got, I don't know how many, but she's got like about a dozen romance novels, and then she's got like maybe a couple dozen thrillers and mystery novels. So obviously I probably won't be reading the romances. Nothing against romance or people that like that stuff. I ain't gonna, but the mysteries are good. Let's talk about this. So this came out in 1995. That's probably about the time I read it the first time. Let's talk about the covers first, because I love graphic design and cover illustration. This is not the cover of the 1995 version paperback that I read. This is like a more updated cover. It gets to the point. I mean, there's a house there. There's a shadow in the snow. This is the perfect winter reading experience. I mean, it's been the coldest couple days here in Utah, and yet this year in 2022, got really cold, freezing cold. This was the perfect book to just sort of sit in your cold house with your little heater next to you, or a fireplace if you've got that, and just read, because it's just a mystery novel set in the deep winter of Minnesota. One of the reasons I remember this was the book that I had read previously was because as soon as I opened up the first pages, I recognized the opening little paragraph here, and I'm going to read it to you because it's fucking dope. And you'll see why it's dope after I'm done reading it. So, the three amigos. That was what Brian's dad called them. Brian's family had moved to Deer Lake, Minnesota from Denver, Colorado, and his dad was still a big Broncos fan. He said the Broncos used to have some wide receivers called the Three Amigos, and they were really good. Josh was a Vikings fan, though. As far as he was concerned, every other team was just a bunch of wussies, except for maybe the Raiders, because their uniforms were cool. He didn't like the Broncos, but he liked the nickname the Three Amigos. Opening paragraph. That's dope. I remember the Three Amigos. There were receivers for the Denver Broncos back in the 90s. I hate the Denver Broncos. This kid named Brian, my name's Brian. This kid named Brian, his dad loves the Broncos, but he hates the Broncos. I hate the Broncos. I'm already liking this kid Brian that has my same name. Not only that, well, he's a Vikings fan. I can forgive the fact that he's a Vikings fan because he's growing up in Minnesota, and the Vikings are pretty cool, purple, you know. But he does say that the only other team he has respect for are the Raiders because they look cool. I remember reading that back then. I remembered reading it here. I'm like, I like this kid. Now, here's the thing. Brian is part of this group of kids that plays on a little junior hockey team. And they're just little kids, and they play on a junior hockey team in Minnesota. And they get out of hockey practice, and their mothers are slowly picking them up. And there's three friends. They're good friends, and they're like throwing snowballs and tossing each other in the snow. And their coach comes out, and he seems like a jolly fellow. And the kids are slowly getting picked up from the hockey practice in the very bitter cold of Deer Lake, Minnesota, one by one. And then there's a young kid named Josh who is last to get picked up. And so he's like wondering where his mom is. His mom doesn't show up for a long time. He's just freezing. He's like, I'm going to walk home. And Kid goes missing. Kid vanishes off the face of the earth. His mom was caught up at the hospital because she's a nurse, and so she was caught up in an emergency at the hospital, just forgot about her son. Her son goes missing. Trauma ensues. That's the basis of our mystery here. And it kind of ties back to a mystery that happened 20 years ago. We get a lot of little interludes where the killer himself is writing in his journal or something. Is very cryptic writing. The entire book takes place in the span of less than a couple of weeks. In fact, every single day, every chapter, it opens with the time of what day it is, the time of the day, and the weather outside, what the weather is. So you get, it's like the first chapter, January 12th, 1994, day 1, 5:26 p.m., 22 degrees outside. And over the course of a few weeks, it gets very, very cold, and which plays a part in the mystery here. So we've got our two cops that are looking at this mystery. One named Mitch and another one named Megan O'Malley. And now Mitch and Megan O'Malley have this weird relationship. This is bizarre, and I kind of even recall thinking this when I read it back in '95. Is Mitch is kind of a douche. Not only is he a douche, but he's kind of a misogynist. He treats Megan like garbage right off the bat, like abusively, and but they fall in love. Anyway, that's a little bit of a minor, I don't know if even that's a spoiler, but anyway, because, you can see it coming from a mile away. You can see it coming from a mile away that these people, even though this guy's a hole, the lady's going to fall for him. Anyway, so, Deer Lake, Minnesota. I looked it up. I always look these things up. It's not a place. It's just a made-up place. That's fine. It's got a large cast. This book has a large cast of characters. In fact, if I ever write mystery novels, I want to write them kind of in the same vein as what Tami Hoag is doing, is just kind of an omnipresent, I don't want to do like a first person, like Harry Bosch is a first person narrative. A lot of mystery novels, like the Robert Crais, Elvis Cole books, they're like a first-person mystery. And so the person you're seeing the whole mystery through, they got to be an engaging character, like Harry Dresden from the Dresden Files. You see everything through his eyes, but he's an engaging character. If I do mysteries, I want to do more of the Joe Pickett, C.J. Box route or the Tami Hoag route, where you've got an omnipresent view. So you actually kind of get into other characters' heads that are part of the story, part of this community. It's got a large cast, and we get to see a lot of the perspective of this mystery as it plays out through a lot of different lenses. It's a small town, of course. It's got all this small town gossip and problems and all those things that happen, and now there's a serial killer supposedly on the loose. Here's the thing that I remember also about this book from 1995. It's part of a duology. This book and the sequel, Guilty as Sin, sort of comprise the entire narrative of this mystery. So just keep that in mind. The sum of the plot points do wrap up in this. Others are left wide open, and they are concluded in Guilty as Sin. I do remember that from my earlier reading, and this reading confirmed it again, and I was like, okay. Back then in 1995, when I was reading this, I didn't ever pick up Guilty as Sin, so I don't even know how this ends. But now the question begs itself, did I enjoy this the second time through to go ahead and not only get the sequel, Guilty as Sin, but also the rest of the Tami Hoag mystery novels? That's the question. Did I like this? I actually really did. I actually thought this was kind of schooling me if I ever do want to write my own mysteries. This was kind of schooling me in kind of the way artistically that I'd like to go about it. Just have an omnipresent view looking at the mystery. Elizabeth George does this with her Inspector Lindley novels. She does it perfectly. Just have a huge cast of characters. Get into the heads of all of them. Maybe even the killer, like we get in here, and just see where things go. I give this a solid 8.5 out of 10. And we shall see if I get more of these Tami Hoag books in the future.